my review of GRIMSLINGERS. And we are here to play a game. A game of magic, mystery, bloodshed. And there's a man in costume carrying power cables. Not gonna lie, this place is a little anachronistic. This is a story of hooligans and outlaws that are traveling across the Forgotten West on a tall tale. A tall tale of adventure, magic, and mystery. And I am here to talk about how the game is played and what I think of it. Not only that, but of the Northern Territory expansion, which once again greatly expands the scope and rules of the game. Now, fundamentally, GRIMSLINGERS is a card game.
Are you going to talk like that the whole time?
Yeah?
You sound like the kid from Tokyo Drift.
Anyway, as said before being interrupted, GRIMSLINGERS is a card game split between two modes, versus and co-op, with the former also being known as duels in certain circles. I was initially interested in this game based purely on its art, and why wouldn't anyone? It's magnificent. As one that refuses to compromise on that aspect of production, I can appreciate how fortunate it must be for the artist of a game to also be its creator. I was once taught that to be successful, there are 3 aspects of any field one could master, and the goal is to be great with, at most, 2 of them. If a master of 1, you'll do well, 2, and your success is near guaranteed, but try for all 3 and you're doomed to fail. Technically, this was a business class, but I believe the rules apply to basically anything in life. To make a thematic board game requires artistic skill, narrative aptitude, as well as the ability to construct a balanced set of rules that are both fun and easy to understand. I admit expertise in facilitation and production is also required. Work with me here. I believe I know where I stand on this chart, as does Stephen S. Gibson, the creator of GRIMSLINGERS. The game is strong in 2 aspects, but ultimately stumbles with the 3rd. No more significant example of this can be found than looking at the core box's rulebook and noticing its 3rd edition title. I never even knew that there were previous editions, with vestigial elements of prior editions still found across the material in this updated version. One rule referenced a face-off, an aspect of the game no longer implemented. It's unfortunate the designers never bothered to update the cards along with the new rulebook. If you want details on how the earlier build played out, I suggest Z. Garcia's review on the Dice Tower. The box is split into cards dedicated to the Versus mode, the cooperative Tall Tale mode, and those shared between the 2. The game suggests starting a Versus mode as the means to learn the game, and I personally believe this should be the only time you play that mode. Each player receives a character card. Yeah, I know, I said this art was terrific. A hit point tracker that slides underneath said card, an archetype, an anima card, along with its energy tracker, and a set of target cards of 1 color. This is how you determine who is attacking who in games of 2 or more than 2 players. Players also get to choose 2 signature spells from a collection of 6. Health and energy are set based on the archetype chosen. So the game is pretty straightforward. It's effectively a glorified version of rock, paper, scissors. But the important thing are these spell cards. There's actually 6 of them. So it's a really over-glorified rock, paper, scissors, where earth beats lightning, water beats earth. And in the duel, this is very effective too, because when players select their cards, they then flip them over, and they operate at the same time. So in this situation, ice beats wind. These 2 go off without any problems. But let's say someone played these 2 and flipped those over. Water beats earth, lightning beats water. So in this case, the lightning would actually counteract the water, and it wouldn't have any effect at all, and the lightning would go through. In the old version of the game, lightning would also get a boost. So now it just counteracts water, water stops working, and lightning goes through. Every one of these has a weakness with another version of the card. The downside is that the Tall Tale doesn't employ these. All these cards are being used but the enemies don't have any weaknesses and they don't have any strengths. So this mechanic, which is novel, is not employed in the vast majority of the game in the Tall Tales, which means the vast majority of your game is still playing these 6 cards. And it's unfortunate because you don't have unique spells for a vast majority of the game. In fact, even in the duel, you only have 1 or 2 signature spells, which means the vast majority of your portfolio are these standard 6 cards. Okay, so as you can obviously tell, I'm shooting everything out of order based on time between the camp and the town. So let me rewind and discuss step by step how this game is played. To finish setup, lay down the shuffled and somewhat intimidating item deck. Having removed the Tall Tale Pacific cards from the deck, reveal the top 3 cards. When players cast spells, they are placed in said player's personal discard pile. The majority of used items are put in the shared item discard pile, out of a player's ownership. There are 2 distinct terms regarding the removal of cards from the game: discarding and deactivating. Discarding works the same way as one would expect. Cards played are placed face up in a discard pile. However, cards can also be deactivated, which are placed horizontal and face down. Specific equipment when used can be deactivated instead of discarded, while some spells are forced into deactivation based on personal and enemy actions. No cards are ever permanently lost during the match, not even those deactivated, though recovering deactivated cards is different than those recovering discarded cards. Have I lost any of you yet? For a standard versus game, players will have those 6 aforementioned element spells, 2 signature spells, and that's it. The first part of a round is simple, the standoff phase, where players each take one of the following actions. They can sacrifice any amount of health for energy, though not the other way around. They can resolve a card in their hand with the standoff keyword, and there aren't very many of those, activate one of the Animus abilities, or claim one of the face-up item cards across the scavenge row. You can also deduct 3 energy to return up to 5 deactivated cards back to your hand. The Animus can reload, spending 3 EP to return 4 discarded cards to your hand. You can also purge, discarding spells in multiples of 2 to gain 1 EP each. And finally, you can surge, where you flip the Animus card over, increasing the numerical value of your next card by 1. That's specific, by the way, referring to actual numbers. If spelled as a word, numbers are not increased. After the standoff, it reaches the draw phase. If more than 2 players, each one selects a target card and places it face down. Cards are then revealed, and everyone can discover who's attacking whom. Players then select their spell, which will most likely be one of those element spells. I mentioned spells going off at the same time. That refers to the resolution number. Basically a simplified initiative. The element spells all fire off at the same time, meaning they occur clockwise from the previously established first player. Only the element cards involve this strength and weakness. With a match hinging on the flip of a card, players can be unfortunately knocked out early, leading to duels lasting between 5 minutes and 20 minutes depending partially on luck. After the end of the round, the whole thing repeats. The rock, paper, scissors mechanic is interesting but poorly implemented, and in versus it can occupy a considerable portion of the game. Now, as it should be noted, I don't play the versus mode. It just doesn't do anything for me. I do, however, play that just happened. And if you're playing the game for the purposes of just the duels, you're gonna get disappointed. It just doesn't have the depth that a normal dueling card game will have. But the Tall Tales, where more than half of the game's content is focused on, that's where it's at. That's why you buy the game. That's where the praise comes. As the duels, just not worth it. So let's talk about the Tall Tale, the cooperative version of GRIMSLINGERS. Set aside the target cards, they won't be needed. Same goes for the 3-card scavenge field. Players also have a stash, given they may have too many cards now for the imposed hand limit. A level tracker is placed under the archetype card, with characters gaining new abilities as they increase. Levels are awarded somewhat arbitrarily via the storybook. Said book is broken into prerequisites, actions, and objectives based on the locations the group finds itself in. The item deck grows substantially in size. And we now have a map, where the players explore this new Forgotten West. To move across the Forgotten West involves an adventure turn, including a narrative phase, a node resolution phase, and a movement phase. Naturally, players will know what's expected given the iconography of the map. If a monster or die is rolled to determine the opponent. Now, this Forgotten West is extremely inhospitable and dangerous, and there are creatures you can fight. Some of these creatures can include bandits, dune worm, or my personal favorite, the nude tar. And yeah, that is his name. Now, when you're dealing with these guys, it's not too dissimilar from a game like Gloomhaven. You have a whole bunch of very specific action cards that you would reveal on their turn, which you mix with their own generic creature cards. And then by flipping a card over, you get to commit that action on that listed resolution number. Simple as that. On the back of each of these creatures tells you how powerful they are depending on the number of players and the rewards for beating them. The narrative elements sneak in based on when objectives are met, and the game includes 4 chapters to play, which granted isn't much, but this game isn't that much to begin with. So not every single location is going to be a battle or a landmark. Sometimes it's just going to be an event. And once again, not too dissimilar from Gloomhaven, you've got these event cards. Mouthful of Trouble, Shadowy Stealers, Soul River. There's actually quite a few of these, good 30 or 40 of them in fact. And I think this horse is about to fart in my face. Events can involve rolling dice, drawing cards from a number deck, or simple choices characters make. The story is admittedly linear, with only a few moments to offer characters the illusion of choice, the only aspect of personalization being the repertoire of cards players possess in their tableau. The surprise is that the narrative is honestly quite good. The writing is witty and funny in places. I couldn't help but add flourish to my moments of narration, which is something I can't even say was tempting during Gloomhaven. Ignoring any criticism, GRIMSLINGERS certainly has personality. Returning to what I said earlier, I don't care for the versus game, despite it at least having some aspect of strategy when involving the punch-counterpunch of element spells, an aspect the Tall Tale portion lacks. Element spells in Tall Tale are just minor attacks each player possesses, and little more than that. And to make matters worse, players don't even begin with signature spells, meaning each player is effectively identical save for that archetype that they chose. Enemy actions range from the bizarrely mundane to the cataclysmically destructive, capable of wiping out half the party and ending the game based purely on one card's reveal. The idea of mixing generic cards with name cards is clumsy and honestly hinders gameplay. A basic set includes only 6 monsters, so would it have been really that difficult to add 18 more cards and make each monster genuinely unique? And reiterating the point earlier, none of the monsters employ strength or weaknesses regarding the element spells, meaning the success or failure of your attack is based as much on dumb luck than it is on strategy. For nearly every monster we fought, I ignored any tactics involving deactivating cards or robbing the monster of energy and focused solely on abilities that inflicted as much damage as possible. In essence, limiting the number of turns the monster turned over an action card. This has resulted in battles taking as few as 2 turns to resolve. Monsters track HP and EP via their own trackers, and there is an interesting creature modifier which does offer some replayability in facing off the same monsters repeatedly. Like versus mode, fighting monsters feels more random than it should. Players can't coordinate element spells. You'd think there'd be rules present for synergy, casting fire and lightning together, for example, to create a new effect, something to make these element cards distinct in some way and offer players the opportunity to strategize. I know that came off as critical, but I keep playing GRIMSLINGERS. It's just too much damn fun playing through its story. Going back to the Tall Tale, if you land on a rest node, you can finally regain some hit points as well as commit to a standoff action or trade cards with your stash. Dying does not result in instant elimination, thankfully. In fact, the difficulty of a game affects the number of defeats a group can suffer before losing the game, with the normal difficulty allowing up to 2. If a character is defeated, after the next turn they are restored HP and EP based on said difficulty, and the game continues. Thankfully, despite the randomness of combat, I have yet to lose a game of GRIMSLINGERS, and I would consider that praise as a come for the story, not to have my nethers punched in repeatedly by a cruel game. And that is the 3rd edition of GRIMSLINGERS, which I will now toss, for the most part, as the Northern Territory expansion once again alters the rules. If you're counting, that means we're up to 4th edition in only 3 years, and I kid you not that there's already an errata posted online. In the old game, you had these, I guess, class cards, basically define who you were. Those are gone. You also had level cards. Those are also gone. What's been replaced is a progressive point system where you buy your abilities instead of going up levels. Now, the Northern Territory expansion also comes with only 4 characters, unlike the previous game which gave you about 7 or 8. They were the cool ones, I guess most of the cool ones. The important thing is that the dog and the cat are in the new expansion. And look at them. They're adorable. I mean, the cat got a 6-shooter, the dog has a sword. And in case you're wondering, the dog's sword is called Cat's Bane. Unfortunately, it does mean if you were playing the previous game with the other characters and you want to get into this one, without waiting for an expansion, you're going to have to drop in and pick one of the 4 characters that are in the Northern Territory expansion. With archetypes and levels removed and the characters limited to 4, you'd think that this expansion would have reduced scope, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Most of the box is dedicated, and rightfully so, to the cooperative half of the game. By this point, more than just half, though the mechanics affecting both aspects have also been altered. Again. Without archetypes, all characters begin life with HP and AP at 8 in Versus mode, 5 in a Tall Tale. The hand limit is the same, 8 in Versus, 5 with a Tall Tale, resulting in the stash being critically important in both games. In Versus, the stash is limitless, but in the Tall Tale it starts at only 3, meaning from the get-go you're already employing it to store superfluous cards. In Versus, players only select 1 signature spell instead of 2, furthering the importance of the element spells. However, the characters now have access to unique skill cards, and I do mean unique. Nyanyo has a 6-shooter she can load to the game, while Kipper can morph into, well, a super dog. The new box comes also supplied with character cards to help with the often confusing rules, offering a way to organize one's tableau. The monsters and item sections benefit from reference cards as well. Actual gameplay features 1 significant alteration. Players now gain 2 standoff actions during that phase instead of 1, though only one of those can be through the Animus. Specific Grimslinger abilities can also be used, and cards can be swapped between one's hand and stash. The game is apparently trying to push the skill cards over the signature spells, especially since in a Versus game you acquire 4 of the former. However, it's with a Tall Tale where the contributions of the Northern Territory expansion really shine. There are no rest nodes. Instead, players gain a standoff phase, meaning they no longer recover hit points or EP and must rely on their spell work and items to save them. In fact, there are technically no nodes at all. That map from the core book? Toss it. Now you have a generated map via a deck of cards. Now in this abridged demonstration, we can see here a couple of cards that you would lay out if you were creating a map that your meeple would move across. Now, when you land on ones like these will be face up. The red portal, kings are landmarks, and then the chest. In order to open the chest, you got to find one of the keys. The keys are hiding underneath some of these cards. There's also a queen here, another one. Another legendary key. Legendary key opens legendary chest. Pretty straightforward, right? We'd also see the red portals, special events, and then these ones are face down, so you don't know what's on them. When your meeple moves from one location to another, you reveal that location. Here, nothing happens, so you can rest. Same goes here. This is an event. That means you got to check the event deck. And then this is an attack, which means you fight a monster. And that's basically the whole map. Now, I thought originally that, why don't they just simply have the landmark's name? Like, you know, Llama Llama Sip Sip or stuff like that. But there are different configurations, and this landmark might mean something else in another game. But still, I thought, why not just have the landmarks? Why have the iconography? Until I realized something. This whole location deck is actually a 52-card legal-sized deck of playing cards. You could actually play with this set of cards. That means the Northern Territory expansion gives you a completely unique but a completely legal set of 52 playing cards. Ace through King, all the way through in every suite. And they're cool too. I mean, they got illustrations, they got cool iconography and symbols. These are superly cool cards. And that's one thing I don't think a lot of people have mentioned, that you actually get a complete set of playing cards with this game. Man, that's actually pretty cool. I don't mind the symbology. And here come the bagpipes. Okay, back to reality. This is one such configuration, and as stated, this configuration may change depending on the region the group is entering. The game suggests that if you have not played through the previous book story, to run through that one first, ignoring references to levels or nodes. Instead, you employ this map. The entire Valley of Death book from the first game takes place on this map. The Child of Light not only expands outside the valley, like the Red River and the foreboding Gates of Hell, but also features branching story points. This means players may run through different alternate paths and discover new elements based on actual player choice. The new box also offers not one, but 2 different terror paths where players can track their purchased character upgrades and the rewards, bestowing progression points to acquire said upgrades. And characters will earn these points continually. We even start the campaign with 20, offering considerably more customization than previously seen. In my campaign, I get to play Nyunyo, and already she exhibits actual personality in both the narrative portions as well as combat. Alas, combat is virtually untouched, suffering from the same problems with the earlier expansion. However, as mentioned earlier, they do gain their own reference card, which greatly helps. But they also now acquire dispositions, which offers another level of replayability. The spot only holds 1, but you actually draw 2, and if characters are able to satisfy the disposition, they can inflict status effects or straight up damage their opponent. In one battle, my group was able to kill an entire Doomworm in a single turn. So, one thing about Grimslingers that I actually have to state, though, I've made a couple comparisons to Gloomhaven, and I feel that those comparisons are accurate, because you deal with monsters that have randomized actions based on flipping over a card. You have character classes. You have, when you move from place to place, you draw event cards that have story points on them, just like Gloomhaven. There are characters you develop through experience points. The first game had levels, but the new game has progressive points. In fact, I'd almost say that in many ways, Grimslingers is like a pocket-size Gloomhaven, right? It simplifies a lot of the mechanics, but it gives you a lot of the exact same type of a dynamic character development storyline. Every playthrough is going to be a little different, and with a new expansion that gives you this customized map that always changes, that's not too dissimilar from making a whole bunch of tiled maps. I'm not saying that it can be measured on every level, but the idea of a baby Gloomhaven is not too far from the truth. Grimslingers is only like less than 30 bucks. I think it's like $25 for the core set. The expansion's only like $24 or $25. So that means with both sets together, you're looking at $40 for a game that emulates to even a slight degree of Gloomhaven. I don't know how that could be anything else but praise. Which brings us to the new app. To ease people into the game and streamline certain elements, the designers attempted to create one. Appreciated, but clumsy. The app recreates the card map and can replace the event cards and even the monster trackers. This is useful only if you're limited to desk space, because the game with all the characters and trackers takes up substantial real estate. I'm going to be anachronistic for 1 second and bring my girlfriend into the shot, because she's been helping me through the whole thing.
Girlfriend?
Fiance. I should just remind you, well, most of you guys have seen the video anyway. You know I basically proposed to her within a box of Feast for Odin. But beyond that, our opinions on the game are mixed. I mean, I really, really like the game, but even after 3 games, it still feels a little clumsy.
Yeah, it's taking me a long time to get the hang of it. Like, I still don't think I understand the game.
No, that's kind of an important thing about the game, is that it's straightforward. It is actually relatively easy to learn, but for some reason, it just feels kind of finicky. I mean, I think the game means well, and I definitely think that the duel portion of the game is tacked on because I think that the creator feels like he has to include a dueling competitive version of it, but I don't think the game is designed for that. As a cooperative game, considering that the majority of the expansion and the majority of the base core book seems to be dedicated to the cooperative mode, it seems like that would be the standard mode. You agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't like it in competitive anyway, because I get too angry.
Yeah, exactly. So you would still give it, would you play it again?
I will play it again. Maybe after I read the rules.
You're saying I'm not a good teacher?
No, I think the rules are just not that good.
Yeah, that's one thing also about both the core system and the first, second, third, and now fourth edition rules with an errata you can find online. Even with those, I wouldn't necessarily say that the game is still easy to learn. I mean, in comparison, we just packed out Mystic Vale. I read how those rules, and within 10 minutes, I had the game sussed out. I have seen 3 playthroughs of GRIMSLINGERS and read all 3 rule books, and I am still having to check the rule book once in a while to figure out what a rule means.
Yeah.
In summation, GRIMSLINGERS is a flawed work of genius. I'd still give the versus mode a pass despite featuring one mechanic the cooperative mode could stand to include, but the latter overflows with such personality and good intentions, I can't help but love it. However, this does come with a significant caveat that one procures both the core box and the Northern Territory expansion, then throw out about 30 cards from the original set, and then potentially wait until the remaining character cards are supported with expansions the game promises but has yet to deliver on. There am I still criticizing. I'm still going to play this game, for the very least to see how it ends, because unlike many other board games in my collection, I actually care about GRIMSLINGER's story. And that I believe is the best praise I can offer.
All right.
So because obviously there are a lot of people who are going to be wondering where I'm shooting. This is the guy. This is the mayor of Barkerville, basically. He's the manager of.
Well, actually, I'm not anymore. I have a new title.
Oh, what is it?
I am the
Kingpin.
Public Programming and Global Media Development Lead.
That's a lot of syllables. It's more syllables than the last position. So it must be better. And you still run day-to-day operations.
I run the interpretive programming, so all of the professional actor historians that you encounter here in Barkerville, they work for me. And I also do public relations and media development, so content creation, multimedia stuff.
Yeah, and so like basically whenever you see any of the actors or any of the operations, any of the theater productions, and it's basically this guy who organizes it all. And Barkerville is a fantastic historic town. It's in basically central BC. It is a great place to visit. I've been here a couple of times. They run a fantastic steampunk-themed murder mystery evening. It's in September, and he's also an accomplished producer, director, and actor. He's actually a fantastic actor. And he does a great show called The Fred Will Show, which I've seen, and it's an absolutely brilliant performance, one-man show. And do you want to plug the movie?
Certainly, yes.
Okay, so he is the writer, producer, and director on The Doctor's Case, which is a adaptation of a Sherlock Holmes short story written by Stephen King. I got it. And do you have any other film festivals coming up?
Yes, actually, the next major festival that we'll be in is at the end of July in New Hope, Pennsylvania, the New Hope Film Festival.
Yeah.
Of course, we wanted to get into that one because of the Star Wars connection, which I thought was pretty cool.
New Hope, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then we've got the Regina International Film Festival coming up in August, the Diamond in the Rough Festival just outside of San Diego, California, and then the big one, Kew Gardens International Festival of Film in Queens, New York, in mid-August as well.
And so you can find Doctor's Case is on Facebook.
Absolutely.
And you can see all the awards they've been winning. As I had a conversation with J.P. Winslow, who plays Sherlock Holmes. He's another actor in this troupe. The vast majority... There he is, actually! You couldn't have picked a better time. This is the guy who plays Sherlock Holmes personally. He's a fantastic human being, great guy, incredible attire, both of them.
Dressed up.
So yeah, check it out. This is Chris from Deus Ex Machina for Dice Tower. These are the two of the geniuses behind two geniuses.
Many geniuses.
Two many geniuses
many
for the
geniuses.
Doctor's Case and Barkerville. So come down. This is a great place to visit. Bye. So in case you guys were wondering, it's an umbrella.